This is Apropos. At a time of rising anti-migrant sentiment and rhetoric across much of Europe, one country stands out for bucking the trend. The Spanish Prime Minister has announced plans to grant legal status to 500,000 undocumented migrants and asylum seekers. The government says it will provide residency and work permits to all foreigners who arrived in the country before the end of December, as long as they've lived in Spain for at least 5 months and have no criminal record. With the details, here's James Vazina.
It's a move that goes against the current tide. As countries across Europe adopt tougher speech and stances on immigration, Spain has chosen another path. Between April and June, an estimated 500,000 to over 800,000 undocumented workers and asylum seekers who've spent at least 5 months in the country will be able to apply for residency.
One of the essential requirements is not having a criminal record. Individuals participating in this process who meet the requirements will be able to obtain a legal residence permit in Spain with an initial validity of 1 year. After this period, they can transition to statuses provided in current regulations, allowing for full and progressive integration into the system.
Their children will be given a 5-year permit. These decisions were adopted via a royal decree bypassing Parliament in order to integrate the mostly Latin American and North African workers, many of whom contribute to the country's agricultural, tourism and service sectors, the backbone of Spain's booming economy. Spain's economy grew by 2.8% last year. That's almost double of that of the entire Eurozone. And Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says that immigrants are key to sustaining the workforce. But the plan has attracted criticism from opposing parties, with the Conservative Popular Party saying that the move will attract more migrants. Even Tesla's CEO Elon Musk hit out at the government, and Sanchez's reply was the following.
Some say we've gone too far, that we're going against the current, but I would like to ask you, when did recognizing rights become something radical? When did empathy become something exceptional? Spain is above all a welcoming country, and this is the path we choose: dignity, community and justice.
This isn't the first time that Spain is implementing such a plan. In 2005, it granted amnesty to 600,000 migrants who were able to enter the legal labour market and pay tax on their earnings.
To discuss, let's bring in Nando Sigona, Professor of International Migration and Forced Displacement at the University of Birmingham. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme. So why, as we saw in that report there, anti-immigration policies sweeping across an awful lot of Europe. So why then is Spain moving in a different direction or going against the current, as the Prime Minister said there?
The economy of Spain at the moment is particularly strong. Spain is also is one of the few sort of liberal centre-left government in Europe at the moment. It also has taken a very critical position against Donald Trump, that in a way is fronting the anti-migration group across sort of the West. They also have actually the example of the 2005 regularization, that they have data that show that the regularization of 500,000 people actually contributed to the economy. There is no evidence that the migrants that were regularized will be a weight on the welfare state. And actually, the important thing is that if you allow people to regularize their position, this actually create opportunities and also enable actually a more social control rather than pushing people in the underground.
So when Pedro Sanchez refers there to empathy, then, is it as clear-cut as that? Is this all about recognising rights, as the Prime Minister is putting it? Cynics might say he's also trying to stand out from the crowd, from the opposition, and trying to appeal to voters as well.
I think it's also a very pragmatic choice. The thing that's often we don't understand is that irregular migration is the product, almost the dark side of migration rules. You can change the rules and irregular migration change. Just to give you an example, the largest group of undocumented migrants in Europe before the accession to Central and Eastern European countries were Romanian and Bulgarian in most Western European countries. When the country became part of the European Union, they became EU citizens, and from one day to another, those irregular migrants disappeared. Okay? So this is important. You see, the way we approach migration and the rules that we create are what actually created condition for people to be pushed into irregularity very often. And this is actually what Spain is doing, is showing that another path is possible. And it's not the only country in Europe. Many European countries have experience of regularization. Just to give an example, Italy just in 2020 issued a regularization that was expected to regularize up to 800,000. In the end, it was less than 300,000 people. The Netherlands has an ongoing regularization scheme at the moment. What is really striking is the fact that it is come out so publicly about it, has been so sort of defending it in public. Also with this interview in English, is really telling that he's trying to send out a message to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and why exactly is he doing it now then?
He's doing it now because a lot of parts in Europe are moving in a different direction, partly because we are seeing the beginning of a resistance to the model that Trump is imposing in the US, the resistance to ICE, for example. So it's a good moment to show that there is a different way of doing it. If I look from the British perspective, it's interesting that in the last few months, there has been a very strong increase in immigration enforcement against undocumented migrants in the country. And then suddenly now, after what is happening in US, they've gone much more quiet in terms of publicly supporting that kind of approach. One other reason for this is that by pushing so much enforcement, removal, first, we don't address the issues because it's actually impossible to remove all the undocumented migrants because in a way, the legislation always produces new ones in different ways. But it also creates public anxiety, it feeds public anxieties about migration. What Spain is trying to do is, in a sense, is to detoxify the issues of migration.
And you say that this is a pragmatic decision, Nando, but how is it actually going to work in practice? There's going to be a time-limited plan, we're told. Successful applicants are going to be given a legal residence permit with just an initial validity of 1 year. What happens then?
Sure. The point is, and this is something that other regularization schemes have not done in the same way, is that if you allow people 12 months to find a job and that give them the chance to start to build a path to citizenship, and then they can go through the mainstream sort of migration schemes. There are no restrictions, for example, to the kind of jobs they have to find. There is not clear yet what will be the requirement. The important thing is the only exclusion clause at the moment is the fact of not having a serious criminal records. In the past, for example, Italy, when they did the regularization, they imposed very strict rules and conditions, and this meant that a lot of people that were regularized, they were unable to then find a job that would secure them in the long terms. So the less sort of rules are imposed on the regularization, the more opportunities open for people to find their path. And with an economy that is really need migrants, a country which has got a demographic crisis ongoing, there are opportunities for people.
Yeah, because how important are immigrants actually to the Spanish economy? We might think initially of the tourism sector.
It's the tourism to some extent. I mean, there is other sector like the building sector, the construction, real estate is one that really relies. The agriculture is by far the largest one. And one of the difference with other countries like Italy in Southern Europe is that Italy has a very informal agriculture sector. So when they try to regularize migrant workers in agriculture, it was very difficult because normally migrant workers are not given regular contracts. In Spain, the sector is more regularized, more regular in the sense economically, and this also offers more opportunity for people to find contracts that will be necessary for extend their stay.
And Nando, there is some concern among migrants in Spain that authorities are going to struggle to manage the process of going through all of these applications and doing it within that particular window that they've put in place for themselves. Is that something that you would be concerned about, or do you think the red tape is going to be worked through and that's really something that people in Spain who might be applying for this shouldn't really have to worry too much about?
I think the logistics of running a scheme like this is it's challenging. It's also true that this decree it was born as a popular legislative initiatives over in 2021. So they have had, in a sense, they've had time to plan its implementations, and actually, especially in the last 2 years, since when the the proposal went through Parliament and then has been taken up through this decree. So hopefully what is happening, they're going to diversify the way people can apply. There will be a mix of applying in person and online. And the kind of requirement that people have to submit are, in a sense, less than in other regularization. So there is less of a bureaucratic burden on the applicants. So that may make the process faster, but it's challenging. The risk that I see, and also looking, for example, at the example of the DACA program in the United States. So the DACA program is the deferral of deportation for young undocumented migrants that was introduced in 2012 by Barack Obama. Is that when people come forward, they give their own details. These details become part of the information that the state has on people. And then what we are seeing in the US is that you change the government, you have someone like Trump in power, and those data can be weaponized against people. So this is something is a risk, and it will be important to see how the Sanchez government is trying to secure the data not used for the opposite outcome that the regularization is for.
The rest of Europe will be watching closely, I'm sure. Nando, thanks so much for being with us on the programme. We'll have to leave it there. That's Nando Sigona, Professor of International Migration and Forced Displacement at the University of Birmingham. Well, that's it.